Welcome to the As Yet Unknown podcast. My name's Alex Snyder, your back pocket consultant and connection catalyst. Entrepreneurship is a bit like bungee jumping, a big leap into the unknown, and it can be a lonely, bumpy ride. It's also one of the most empowering and liberating things you can do. Each episode is a dose of fresh perspectives designed to leave you feeling connected to innovative ideas and inspired about growing your business your way. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's have an adventure. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody who is here live. Hopefully you can hear us. I apologize for my voice, but thankfully Charmaine will be doing most of the talking today. I'm so excited to have her here. Charmaine is a registered nurse, and in dealing with the incredible job of nursing, knows what it is like to live in high stress, uncertain, pressure-filled times. And as a former carbaholic who really used sugary and carby foods to deal with that stress, Charmaine, you were diagnosed with prediabetes in 2017 and really have been on a journey to change your habits and understand how we as humans can work more optimally in these times of stress to really form new realities and just improve our lives, and particularly important to this conversation, improve our businesses by doing so. So welcome and thank you so much. Please feel free to add on to that introduction about what you're doing now.
Oh, yes. Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. So excited for this conversation. So my name's Charmaine. So as Alex said, I was a registered nurse, and I'm also I like to call myself a sugar cravings coach. So I help women entrepreneurs feel in control around sugar and say no to sugar cravings with ease and feel better without food. So the interesting thing about when I was pre-diabetic in 2017 was that the reason why I was pre-diabetic was because I was stress eating a lot, and I didn't realize that. Like in the hospital, like Alex said, it's a very high stress, fast paced environment. And a lot of the foods that they have in the hospital in the staff break room are donuts, bagels, cookies, cakes, all the sweets all the time. And so I was eating a lot of that stuff before, during, after my shifts. And that's part of what led me to have pre-diabetes. So it was to cope with stress. So we could dive more into that later. But yeah, that's what set me on this journey, and now I love to help people with that.
So, Charmaine, I feel like the question that we all have, or I think we all have because I have it, is we know what we should do, right? Like we know there's so much information readily available on the internet about, the pillars of health and healthy habits and, different ways that we can optimize our cognitive and physical performance. So why don't we do it?
That's a great question. And that's the number one question I get asked from my clients and from everyone who's interested in this work. So the first thing I want to say is, even though we know what to do, eating sugar, especially during stressful times, it's not an intellectual thing. Like, it doesn't matter how much you know, because when we have a stress response, it's not about what we know. It's about safety and survival. And so I just kind of want to explain a little bit more about what I mean by the stress response. So I'm sure a lot of us have heard about fight or flight, especially as entrepreneurs. And when I was a nurse, there are a lot of situations you're in where everything seems like a threat, like especially in business. If your income's going down, if you're a nurse and your patient just fell, or your patient's is coding and you're afraid they're going to die, like there's so many threats that will send your body into this fight or flight response. And normally this fight or flight response is supposed to help you take action that's useful in confronting the threat. But a lot of the times we also have threats that aren't actually making us in physical danger. So that's a lot of what happens with being an entrepreneur. We have a lot of perceived threats. So it could be even though it is, I know there's a lot of things with money and the bank account going down, but we're not actually physically in danger at the moment, but we have a lot of perceived threats. So it could be getting a sale that's not going through, like a consult call that's not going through, or a client that wants a refund, just all these things, right? So when we're in this fight or flight response, it's not intellectual. It's actually just an automatic physiologic response in our body. And so when that
Mm,
happens, we don't have control over it happening. We can't tell our body, don't go into fight or flight because it's a survival mechanism.
right.
Right. So, but what happens is when we do go into a stress response and we're not aware of it, it actually causes the release of cortisol in our body, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And that hormone will actually make you crave sugar and carbs because it's preparing your body to fight or run. So it's kind of like saying to your body, hey, we need some more energy, so let's go. Like, we got to eat something that's quick, we got to eat something that's easy to digest. And that's what I found with nursing. It's like when I was stressed, I would just automatically not even think about it, just go in the break room and eat all the bagels, the cookies. It's especially cookies. Cookies was my thing. I ate all the cookies. So I just want to say that there. It's not your fault that you're doing that. It's a physiologic response. And it just helps to release some shame around that, because we're so smart. So many entrepreneurs are so ambitious, but that automatic response is not in our control. But we do have control of knowing when the response happens and how we can mitigate it before it turns into a result that's not useful for us.
That's so helpful because I think we forget, like you said, so many entrepreneurs are so bright, there's so much that we know, but it's this part of us that is so survival based, right? Our lizard brain and, the amygdala that's thinking there's a threat, I need to respond. Our bodies don't really understand that we're not at risk of dying. It's not a tiger, that's going to eat
Right.
us, that we need to
It
like
can feel like
fuel
it
up
though.
for a long run.
Right.
So it's almost like once we're there, there's so much like evolutionary automation happening that, it's why we're here as a species, right? We've survived that, like, of course it's powerful. So I guess it sounds to me like there's almost, a process, which probably happens really quickly, but there's sort of a process, and being able to recognize when we're headed towards the danger zone is maybe really important. So is it recognizing on the way, or recognizing when you're not operating optimally, that matters? Sort of like what's important, and how can we recognize that? And I guess the question I would have is definitely, can we self monitor that, or do we actually need like to call in some help?
Ooh, great questions. So yeah, I definitely think you could self-monitor, but it definitely takes practice because it's such an automatic, involuntary response. So at first, so I always speak about having awareness, self-awareness. A lot of coaches are big on that, right? Like, be self-aware of your thoughts and your feelings and your actions. But sometimes it just happens so fast. So sometimes self-awareness comes after the fact. So sometimes it might happen after you've eaten all the cookies in your refrigerator or your pantry. And that's when you're kind of like, so if it happens so fast and you've already eaten the things, that's the first sign of, and you didn't realize it, like, that's probably the first sign that, okay, maybe there was a stress response. And that's a great way to not beat yourself up, but be curious and to just sort of ask yourself, okay, like, what was that about? Like, what was I feeling during this time that I was eating these cookies? Like, what was I thinking that eating these cookies would solve for me? So in the beginning stages of doing this work, the first step of awareness is just after the fact. Like, you've eaten the things, you've procrastinated all day, you've done nothing in your business. Those are good signs that maybe the nervous system is a little dysregulated and we got to like pay attention. For me, it was being pre-diabetic. I was like, even if I ate cookies, I didn't think it was a bad thing because I didn't know I was eating too much. So sometimes I needed feedback from external measure, like my lab results. So I looked at my hemoglobin A1C. That's the blood test that diagnoses diabetes, and it measures your blood glucose levels over the past 3 months, like the average. So mine was more elevated than normal, so that's why it's pre-diabetic level. So sometimes having an external measure like weight, like the scale, looking at progress photos, or other measures like your emotions, like sometimes it's helpful to have some sort of external feedback because we don't know that what we're doing isn't useful all the time. Because sometimes it
Mm.
won't show up right away. Like, if you eat like a piece of chocolate every day, you might not feel like you might not notice something different right away, especially if your body's adapted to eating that. So it could be useful to have external measures sometimes, and then other measures, like I said, the emotional measures, just kind of like, how are you feeling every day? What's your energy levels like? what's your hunger like, checking with your body's physical reactions. That those could be useful to look at too.
Definitely. I something you said kind of sparked a question for me, if you're eating a piece of chocolate every day. I know some people would argue like, "Oh, that's part of my, routine," or that's part of whatever, that's intentional, it's not a stress response. How do we kind of know maybe the difference?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay. So there are actually some questions that can help you see, which it can help you just, this is sort of like a screening tool. Okay. And it's to help you see if you're actually like addicted to a substance. Like they actually use these questions to help you see if you have an addiction on like some sort of substance. And it doesn't have to be alcohol or whatever. It could be the internet. It could be chocolate. It could be Oreos. It's usually Oreos for a lot of people. So some questions to ask yourself, which there's no shame if you say yes to it, but it's just a good awareness tool to see like what is my relationship with this food, to just help you see is something going on there. So some questions you could ask yourself is, when you're doing this behavior, when you're eating this food, if you think of not eating it, does it bring up agitation or irritability for you? Does it bring up resistance, like a lot of resistance if you think of not having it? Because I think that's the number one question to ask yourself, because if you have no emotional attachment to the food, it's not going to be a problem to not have it. So I'll give you an example.
Mm.
Like for me, coffee was the one thing that I didn't want to give up for a long time. Like it was like, this is fucking my thing, like my ritual, my comfort, all the things. And this was already after I gave up sugar. So I thought to myself, like I was watching a YouTube video one day and this guy said, "Oh, you don't need coffee. Coffee's just not, you don't ever need it in your life. It's just this, it's not necessary." And then that got me thinking like, "Oh, why am I drinking it then if it's not necessary?" So I thought about, okay, if I didn't drink it anymore, what does it feel like? And it felt like, to me, I was like, "Oh my god, it feels like I'm going to die, or it feels like life is meaningless without it." And that's a good sign. So then I was like, "Okay, now I want to, now that's a cue. Like I kind of want to not have
Right.
it so much anymore." So that got me on my journey to get off coffee. So that's one question. Like if you think of not having it, does it bring up resistance or agitation or irritability?
I
Um,
think coffee is such a good one to use because I think it's such a socially acceptable drug, right?
oh, a
I mean, I
hundred
could fill a
percent.
whole podcast with my journey with coffee as somebody who, like, didn't drink it, like, for the longest time and then found myself over consuming it was and then left and then, like, yeah, coffee, I mean, I love it, but I don't drink it regularly anymore. So I think that's a really
Kudos
good
to you.
example
No, that's
because
yeah. Oh,
people
go ahead.
have such a relationship with it, and yeah, I think that's a great example.
Oh, yeah. And you're so right. Like, I mean, kudos to you for noticing that and having that awareness, and being willing to like do what you needed to do to make it beneficial for you. But yeah, it's a challenging one, because that's the thing with some foods. A lot of them are socially acceptable. There's a lot of associations. Like if you eat more sugar, you're like a more fun person, or if you drink, you're like more cool, whatever
Yeah,
person. So there's a lot of social
and it's
attachments to
part of
certain
our
things.
culture, right? Like, "Oh,
Right.
let's go grab a coffee. Oh, let's go for a drink. Hey, do you wanna catch up?" And right? Like and one thing I know I love is, like, normalizing other things, like going for a walk or going like, a lot
Mm.
of my social circle now is, like, people who go to the gym, people who, we go to the gym, we go to the beach, like, we do things that align to, like, the lifestyle I wanna have. Does it mean I never go for a coffee? No. Does it mean I never go for a drink? No. But that is not the default for me has been great. And I don't wanna derail us, but I think, like, it's that self-awareness and intentionality that it's so easy, especially when you are really busy or in, like, really pressure-filled situations or around groups of people, maybe in the office or whatever your work environment is, that, it's like habits
Oh yeah.
are yeah, they're strong and they're strong in social or any kind of network.
Oh, social is the hardest. I mean, yeah, I don't want to go off too much, but the social situation is the hardest because, first of all, there's so many environmental cues, there's so many, like, I don't want to go too off tangent, but there's literally like restaurants are designed to literally make you eat and drink as much as possible. Like there's so much stuff. It's crazy. Like even the weight of the plate, even like the ambiance, like everything is designed to
Mm.
make you eat. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, there's a whole world about food psychology and like all that stuff, how they do it to make you eat more. It's like crazy, but yeah. So anyway, but I love that you said like the habit. It's really about like being aware, and then you could use other things to help you feel better. Like it's just that habit of going to sugar or something to make you feel better. But there's so many things, like you said, going for a walk. There's other ways to feel connected. There's other ways to feel relaxed and feel good in your body. But yeah, some of the other questions you could ask yourself if you're wondering if you're like attached to some sort of external thing is another thing is, are you wanting to hide this behavior at all? Like, are you not wanting your husband or partner, girlfriend or boyfriend to not see you eat this thing, or you don't want someone to see you doing this thing? So that's another sign, like you're wanting to hide it. Another thing is, are you neglecting personal responsibilities in order to do the thing? So are you arriving late to something because you want to eat more? Are you not doing your responsibilities for the day because you want to eat, like things like that? And uh those are like the top ones I have in my mind right now. There's others, but I would just start there, just sort of like
Yeah.
evaluating your eating habits with those questions.
So I love that. Like, I think that's such a helpful checklist, and we'll maybe put a couple of those in the notes when we post this again after. I'm curious then, because I think this is the $1 million question that we're all here for, is how is this like, insert your indulgence of choice habit impacting our business results?
Oh, it's a lot of ways. I mean,
Mm.
first of all, if you're consuming some sort of external, so I'll just go to cookies or something. Like if you're doing something that, at least what I've seen a lot with my clients who are entrepreneurs, if you're doing something like eating a lot of cookies or sweets or things like that, one of the first costs, I guess you could call it a cost, one of the costs that I notice, especially with my clients, is when they start eating those things, there's an emotional cost. Like you might not see the physical cost right away. Like there's some physical, like the weight gain is one thing. Sometimes it might not show up all the way, but first there's unwanted weight gain. And when you have unwanted weight gain and you start not liking how your body looks, you start seeing changes in how you fit your clothes and things like that, that leads to an emotional cost. And the emotional cost is how you think about yourself, how much you're thinking about what you look like when you're showing up on social media, how much you wonder about your lack of self-control, and you think something's wrong with you. You think that you have a problem, you think that you're broken, you constantly obsess about food every day. Like there's a lot of emotional costs there that each time you're thinking it, it's literally taking away energy from what you could use for your business. And it's affecting how people feel when they interact with clients, when they're selling, when they're marketing. And so anytime you have any like energy leaks like that, like it really affects how you show up, and that energy could be seen, it could be picked up by potential clients or even people you network with. Like your energy doesn't lie. Like energy is the most honest thing. And like if you're
Right.
showing up not liking yourself, dreading your business, kind of just like, and also there's like energy cost too. It's like if, eating a lot of sugar especially can cause blood sugar instability, so there's a lot of blood sugar spikes and dips. And if you don't have, energetically you don't feel good, like the energy levels you
Mm.
show up with aren't good, it will make you it'll make you burn out more easily, for one thing. You'll probably want to take much more breaks during the day, so you'll probably not get as much done. You'll probably be eating more, which can lead to more unwanted weight. So there's like a physical cost with the weight and health, there's emotional costs with how you think about yourself and the energy leaks, there's the energy costs with how productive you are in your day, how much you actually get
Mm.
done. And it just leads so much to burnout. Like all those things could lead to burnout and just not wanting to show up to your business. And I think burnout's the biggest cost of all of them, because it will make you ghost your business for 3 months because you got to go on vacation, which can lead to financial costs. Like there's the financial cost too of how much you got to spend for vacations and how much you're eating. So there's a lot of things there. But I think I
Yeah.
think the heaviest one is the emotional cost. Like if you don't feel good about yourself, you won't want to promote yourself. You might not have the confidence to show up for others. And yeah, when you feel good, you just don't want to do anything, you know?
Yeah. I think that's such a good point, and I know for myself, like, just maybe to relate this to people who are not seeing, like, the food connection, especially maybe your, you know, indulgence of choice is healthy, so it doesn't feel but I think what
Oh,
you
that's a good
mentioned, it's kind of like a security blanket procrastination type thing. And I know for myself, even when I'm not having like snack attacks, like,
I
right?
love
Like
that.
that's not always my go-to, but I will notice when I'm like uncomfortable with something that I need to do, I will get up for any reason. Like, I need a million glasses of water, or maybe I want like, no, I want hot water, not this cold water that I have here. Or I need to pee, like, or
Right.
I need to check the laundry, or like there are times where I'm like, I cannot physically like stay in this seat and do anything. Like I sit down and I'll, social media scrolling as well, right? Like
Mhm.
put your phone across the room because you sit down and do something and then 30 minutes later you're still scrolling on your phone, right? So like my monkey brain will do almost anything to avoid something uncomfortable. Like my house, if I'm like stressed and not getting the thing I need done, like is super clean, right?
Mm.
So I think
That's
I find it
interesting.
I find it's always helpful to be like, hey, it doesn't always appear as like super unhealthy coping mechanisms, but it's all part of that same thing. And, you know, whether you're going to end up kind of, overweight and needing a vacation and not having made the sales in your business, or you're going to end up like maybe actually like underweight and with a really clean house, but no sales in your business and needing a
Mm,
vacation. It's really the
right.
same mechanism, right?
Right. Right. And that's such a good point. Like I like how you said some things seem like healthier coping mechanisms than others, but it's it's funny cuz I was always the person who would overeat healthy food, not so much like when I stopped eating sugar, then I started eating like keto cookies and healthy cookies and
Yeah.
like even like nuts. Sometimes I still struggle still with like eating so many fucking nuts. But anyway, like
Same.
but yeah, like sometimes it's like so I don't like to. It's hard to. So it's just more useful to not label which things are good or bad because I know we have a lot of labels in our society
Yeah.
of this is healthy and unhealthy. It's more just look at what is the result of you doing this thing. Like what is the result of that thing? Because if you're exercising as a and you think it's healthy, but you're over exercising and it's making you really sore, it's making you not show up for your business because you need a break or if it's making you not have sales, like I would look more at the results and be real with yourself and honest with yourself about what that behavior is causing you to do or what it's creating for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good point. I know for myself, there are times in my life where I've been under huge amounts of stress and, you know, it's such a, like you said, such a labeling, social acceptable type thing where for me, like training is part of my mental health. And if I'm kind of training a lot and maybe not sleeping and I get like, I eat really healthy often. So I'll be in this phase where people be like, you look amazing, like, da da da, and I'm like, I am falling apart. Right? So
Right.
it's to me, that's no different than somebody who is like, overeating sugar or fats or whatever, right? Like, it really feels like kind of the
Right.
same mechanism, but it just happens to show up in a way that is socially acceptable.
Right. That's a
You
tricky one,
know?
yeah, because you get so much validation from looking like having the muscles or looking ripped, like, you get so much, like, people like, You inspire me," and they say so many things,
Yeah.
and it releases that dopamine, and then you're like, "Oh, dang, okay, I'll keep doing this, I'll keep, like, escaping," but you gotta ask
Right.
yourself, are you doing something to escape yeah, like you said, are you doing it to escape your emotions? Like, are you doing something
Yeah.
to numb yourself in some way because if you are that is what leads to to the issues, like that's what leads to you not getting something done. Like you're
Totally.
not confronting something that could potentially be beneficial for your business.
Yeah, I think for me, I know it's such a fine line. Like, working out is great for my mental health. I sleep better. So, it's not necessarily that in those periods I'm not working on my business, but it's just something I'm aware of that people will like be like, "Oh, you look like amazing." You da, da, da. But I know how I feel, right? And maybe I'm doing the
Mm.
right things, but I know how I
Mhm.
feel, and I know that I am, if you want to say fortunate or whatever, that the way that I kind of handle those things it has a aesthetic result, and that's just like, again, it's, not judging the book by its cover, I think, is really important there. And that being
Right.
said, I mean, enough cortisol, and yeah, like that's there's another end to that, of course, right? um
Right.
but I'm curious, so I'm conscious of time, but I want us to understand, what can we do about this, right? Is this a routine thing? Is this an environment thing? Is this something in the moment? What would you recommend to help us manage our nervous system and survival modes in these moments so that we can be more productive and healthier, right? Like not burn out, right? That's
Right.
I want to make sure we're clear on that. Like not just like so we can be more productive, but so we can be more sustainable.
Right. Right. Yeah, because it's not about, yeah, it's not taking a bunch of actions to burn yourself out. And the first thing I want to say is telling someone to feel your feelings and face the thing that they're trying to escape. It's really challenging. Like if even if it's something that you think is simple, like I'm just gonna make a social media post today, that could be almost debilitating for some people because it's activating your fight or flight response. It's triggering, like if your mind thinks it's unsafe to show up online, I don't care how much you think, oh, it's a simple thing to go on Facebook Live. Like some people, it could really feel like a threat. And so telling someone to just face that fear isn't always comfortable because your body is so good at protecting you against any sort of threat. So emotions could be really threatening. So the first thing I would recommend, even before you go to feeling your emotions, which I think is important, but there's several steps to get there because feeling emotions is very challenging, especially for ambitious people. We are the most disconnected, like ambitious entrepreneurs. We don't want to feel anything. We're so disconnected from our body because we've ignored it for so long. We just ignore it so we get the result done. So the first step is really like you have to know how to have a connection with your body, and part of doing that is just first acknowledging, like noticing when you might be in the fight or flight response, just first being aware a little bit. So some signs that you might be in it is tension. Like that's the easiest sign. It's like if you're at your desk and you're feeling tense, your shoulders all the way up here, you're hunched over. If you're feeling tense, that's a sign that you're having a stress response. Also your breathing, if your breathing's constricted, if you're taking shallow breaths, just like noticing that. Like when you notice those things, then I would recommend to do some like a nervous system regulation technique to just help you get out of the fight or flight response. And when you get out of fight or flight, that could help you start processing emotions much easier. But you have to get out of fight or flight first. So an easy thing that I love to do, which I learned in Qigong, which is a ancient Chinese mind body practice that I've been using it, which I love
Mm.
Qigong because it helps you have this connection with your body. It helps you free up any tension and energy and release the energy in your body. So a really easy one you could do anywhere is called shaking. So they teach us a lot in somatic practices too, in the Western like energy psychology and things like that too. So shaking is good because when you shake your body, it just helps to get this your energy flowing throughout your body, like this stagnant energy. Because if you're tense and tight, the energy's blocked. You're sort of not moving your energy. So if you want to feel your best, you have to release the energy and let it flow.
Mhm.
So I could stand up a bit and just show you what it looks like.
Yes,
So
please.
yeah, so it's really easy. All of y'all watching me on LinkedIn, I want you to do this too. So basically, you just stand up. You can do it anywhere. And first, you could start with your wrists. Just start by shaking out your wrists, and it's gonna just start opening up the energy channels of the energy flow. And then when you do the wrist, if you need more, which I usually do, I have a lot of energy, so I you bounce up and down, like keep your heels on the floor and just sort of kind of bring your knees up and down, kind of like you're doing sort of like partial squats, like, and then just like bounce up and down and just shake. And you could go like to the left and to the right and just like shake your shoulders out. But the more you do this, like I recommend to do it for about 30 seconds to a minute at least. I feel like 30 seconds is too short, honestly, but try to go for a minute. And when you do that, you'll immediately help to release tension and just feel a lot more relaxed. And it could help you get out of fight or flight because you're using the energy from the stress response to do something. You know, you got to use that energy.
I
Yeah, so
love that. That's such a great tool. And I mean, 30 seconds to a minute, like, and is this
really
kind of like
fast.
something you want to do when you are about to kind of, you're like, right, I'm getting up to go get something from the kitchen. Like that's the moment.
Yeah. If you're just like, I don't
Okay.
want to do this thing, just shake it out because it's kind of like your body's trying to avoid the threat. Like you gotta do a different energy thing that will divert your energy in a different way. So you could release the energy doing something else because it's kind of like, it's the fight or flight. You're like avoiding the threat, but instead of using the energy to avoid, use the energy to just kind of release the tension you're feeling so that you could go back and sit down and try to like try to focus a bit on the thing you're doing,
Do the thing.
Yeah, do
Okay.
the thing.
I love that.
At least 1 minute of a thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, so here's another technique I have. So sometimes if you're really feeling like heavy stress, like if you're feeling kind of like, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like it's that energy of like you feel like the stress is coming down on you and you're feeling like impending doom and you're just almost like having a panic attack almost sometimes, which could be debilitating. One of my favorite things is I like to massage this acupressure point right here. So it's in between the nipple line. It's called the Ren 17 point in acupressure, and it helps you with releasing emotion with anxiety and panic. So what you could do is just like put your fingers on it and just like rub it to help release some of that stress energy there. Sometimes though I need more pressure because I don't know, I have a lot of energy. So I use the base of my thumb and then I'll just put it here and then I'll just rub it here. And sometimes I'll use two thumbs and just rub here because I need a lot of like I need to get in there. So just rubbing this part can help you feel good and rubbing certain points of your face. There's a lot of areas in your face that release emotional stress. So especially the point between your eyebrows, this one holds a lot of stress. So you could use your thumbs to kind of the knuckle of your thumbs to just kind of lean into it and massage it a bit. And you could also use your fingers to like massage your temples, and that could help you just release that really like heavy stress energy of like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. Like that sort of like energy that could release that.
I've heard like your eyebrows almost like pinching kind of there and like being able to like pull here and like between your thumb and forefinger as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotional points on the hand, but yeah, like massaging this one here helps with releasing emotion. And then there's also one right here, like in between the pinky and the ring finger right here.
Okay.
It's called the gamut point. And that one's also related to holding energy, like emotion. So like massaging it or tapping it is helpful. And tapping's really helpful too. Like tapping the points, like just tapping those different points on your face, like that's really helpful. But I really like to tap the rib when I'm stressed, the side of the eye, the eyebrow, and then also the side of the hand is a good one.
Awesome. Great. Those are super practical tools. Thank you.
Yeah, it's super fast and it could just help calm down your nervous system. And just one last one I have because breathing can help a lot too. Breathing can activate your parasympathetic nervous system, so it can help you be in a relaxation response right away. So really quick one I like is just to help you with the breathing and release stress. So I just kind of like to go up on my toes, bring my arms up and then take it out. So you go up on your toes, inhale and then release it. And that just feels immediately relaxing and it could help you get into the parasympathetic so you could confront your emotions and confront the challenges you're facing like a little easier.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm so excited to like create my little post-it note of like relaxation reminders. Like every time I'm getting up, check in with myself with, why am I getting up? What's the emotion? Check in with my body. And if they feel a little bit of tension or that maybe I'm like constricted in my breathing before I go do the thing I'm going to do, try one of these tapping or breathing or maybe like shaking. I love the shaking one. I feel like it's just like dance. I just want to like put on some music and get flowing.
Right. Right. Yeah, the shaking is one of my favorites. It's like it could release energy so quickly.
Yeah. Amazing. So anything you want to leave people with beyond what you've already shared, which is so, so helpful, Charmaine?
Yeah, definitely. So when you do those steps, and if you feel an emotion come up after you do those things, then that's the time after you do that you could start to maybe like process emotion. Like you could start like just noticing how it feels in your body, and then when you process that, even for just like 90 seconds, usually acknowledging that emotion and letting yourself feel it, then it'll be much easier to work on whatever task you're going through. Because then when you acknowledge and release that emotion, it doesn't have to seek out your attention anymore. You're kind of like, it's like your inner child almost like wanting your attention. And when you give it that attention and nurture it, then it'll be a lot easier to do what you have to do. But yeah, the emotional acknowledgement, I think it's a lot easier to do after you regulate the nervous system. But anyway, but I just want to say like it could be so easy. Like it only just takes a few seconds to help you feel better. You don't need to eat to feel better. Like your body has everything you need already to feel better.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I love what you said. It's like you don't have to spend forever, but I know something I've done is, if I have uncomfortable thoughts come up, I will make a post like a jot post-it note and I'll stick it on my journal for like to journal about later. But just to like get it out of my head and know that, I'm not going to forget about it. It's not going to go back in to like the insidious thing. Like it's almost like I'm getting it out and I'm like, hey, I need to know enough about it to write it down and then I can like kind of handle it later. I know for me, that's
Ooh.
something that I find kind of helpful.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So it's like, obviously I can't just like interrupt my day to journal all the time. If you have a big thing coming up in that, or that works for you, like, I'm not saying that's the wrong thing, but just practically not always going to be great. But I think giving it enough attention to be able to write like a phrase or a quick sentence for me is often like enough. And it also just gets it out of my head. Right. It's like, oh, hey,
Mm-hmm.
like this thing that's going to like just keep looping. Like, now let me just like get onto a post-it note and then I'll stick it on top of my journal. And then I can like, it's like a 2 journal on topic.
Oh, I love that. Just really quick, like that's a similar thing we do with food too. Because if you notice yourself like obsessing around wanting a specific food, like cookies or whatever, and you keep thinking about the cookie, you could tell yourself or write it out, like you said. You could tell yourself, "Oh, we could have another cookie like later if we want. Like we could have it tomorrow. It's okay. Like we're safe. We could have it. We're gonna have a cookie tomorrow if we
Yeah.
want it." And it's like a similar thing of just sort of reassuring your nervous system that you're not there's safety, you're not threatened, like it's okay.
Well, I honestly could talk for hours to you about this. I have like a million more questions, but I want to be mindful of time. Thank you so, so much for being here, Charmaine, for sharing your own story and, the tools that you have tried and tested for yourself as well as your clients. If people want to know more, where can they find you?
Oh, yeah, they could find me on Instagram. My name is at Charmaine Platon. You can see the spelling here. And then my website's sugarfreeselfcare.com, and I have a YouTube channel. If you want to check out some more of my tools and videos, you could go to youtube.com/sugarfree-self-care-TV.
Amazing. Thank you again. It's been so fantastic to have you here with us.
Thank
And
you.
yeah.
It's been fun.
All right. Well, wishing everybody a productive and focused and emotionally aware day.
Yes, emotionally aware. I love it.
Thanks for tuning in. Our goal is to create connections and inspire conversations. So please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast with your network if you enjoyed today's episode. sharing is caring. If you're ready to take your business to the next level and are curious how I can help, click the link in the episode notes to schedule a call. Got questions or topics you want us to discuss? Click the link in the episode notes to share them with us. Your question might even get featured in an upcoming episode. And remember, this podcast is not intended to replace legal, tax, or other kinds of professional advice. Thanks for joining us on this adventure. We'll catch you on the flip side.